Imagine showing up to work and finding that your favorite coworker had been replaced with somebody who was maybe just as smart, but had no personality and zero sense of humor. This is what happened last week to a lot of users of ChatGPT. So by now, we all know that OpenAI released ChatGPT-5 last week with a lot of fanfare. This was supposed to be faster and smarter and select which model to use for you so you didn't have to worry about, do you want a thinking model or a mini model or a coding model? But that's not exactly what happened. People logged on and found that their chat was not their chat anymore. They'd grown accustomed to that sort of friendly, collaborative, helpful voice that ChatGPT is kind of famous for. And instead, it was hollow and factually correct, but there was no more collaboration. There was no more warmth and helpfulness. It felt like there was no there. So what exactly happened and what can we do about it? So the problem was caused by a couple of things. OpenAI did release a new model, and this model was tuned to be less sort of overly enthusiastic, less like a big gangly Labrador retriever puppy coming up and licking your face and saying, "Hey, can I help you? Do you want to play?" And more like a quiet, reserved assistant who was there to help you and give you the information that you needed. That's not really what people wanted. And to make it even worse, there was an actual systems failure behind the scenes. The way the new model worked is they give us access to GPT-5 and we type in our prompts. Behind the scenes, a router is supposed to decide if our prompt needs a quick little answer or a deeper thinking answer, and it would direct it to the appropriate model. Well, apparently that router kind of broke and it didn't always work correctly. So not only were people not getting the personality that they expected, they were not necessarily getting the answers that they expected. If they had a question that would require a thinking model, sometimes the router routed it to the quick, non-thinking model, and they got actually a worse answer. So now people were left with bad answers and no personality. This affected so many people and got them so angry. They, of course, took to Reddit and Twitter. In kind of a surprising and very helpful move, Sam Altman promised to return 4.0. Kind of. OpenAI is only returning it to people with a paid plan. OpenAI is also trying to work on the personality of GPT-5 to make it a little bit warmer and more interactive. They were, I think, caught kind of off guard by how much people had really come to rely on the chat systems as a friend or a collaborator. People don't use these systems like just a lookup. We're using ChatGPT like a friend or a colleague and saying, well, hey, what do you think of this idea? And I actually care what your answer is. But there is some good news in all this. If you have access to a paid plan, you can now revert back to 4.0. However, if you have a free plan, you don't have that option. And I have a feeling that 4.0 will really be going away for good at some point. OpenAI is working on trying to make GPT-5 a little bit warmer and more personable, so I do think we'll see some tuning coming in the future. And like any release of a brand new product, it's just going to take a little time to shake some of the bugs out of the system. Now, I didn't even have access to the new GPT-5 until a couple of days ago. It was released last week, but as usual, they roll it out slowly to try to avoid some of the problems that they've had in the past. So I haven't had a chance to play with ChatGPT-5 much until the last couple days. And then I was sort of focusing on testing out some of the coding and seeing if the coding was as strong as they were saying. When I did finally manage to just have some normal interactions with GPT-5, I definitely understood what people were talking about. It definitely lacked some warmth, and honestly, it just felt a little detached. It's not that the answers were wrong or bad, it just really was missing that kind of extra that we've come to rely on. Now, you can argue this might be bad. We shouldn't be overly reliant on what is actually just a piece of technology. It's not actually a real person. And I get that. But I think we also know that whatever tool that we're using, comfort is a factor. And if it is more comfortable to work with, more engaging, or if it allows you to interact in a more natural way, that can actually kind of spur your own creativity and your own thought process in ways that are really helpful. So I don't think it's bad that we have come to rely on these AI systems as having a more natural human interaction. I do think that's one of the things that makes them make us more productive. So that's kind of what happened and where we're at. The good news is that ChatGPT also released personalities and a way for us to be able to fine-tune GPT-5's interaction with us. And it's really pretty simple and kind of interesting to play with. All right, so if you are in ChatGPT, I'm in here in a free plan. This is available to everyone. You don't have to pay for this feature. If you go down to your name on the lower left corner and you go into Customize ChatGPT, here's where you can set it up. You can give yourself a nickname and give it some information. But the part we're interested in here is what personality should ChatGPT have? And they've given us 5 options. Default, cheerful and adaptive. The Cynic, critical and sarcastic. The Robot, efficient and blunt. And let me tell you, it is very efficient. The Listener, thoughtful and supportive. And the Nerd, exploratory and enthusiastic. So when I first came in here, I really thought I was going to go with the Listener as the way to try to steer my GPT more toward the 4.0 model. But then it caught my eye that the Nerd was exploratory and enthusiastic. And one of the things I really was missing was that the positivity that GPT 4.0 had. It was always there, ready to support my ideas, ready to help. Yeah, I know it could go overboard sometimes, for sure. And I was hoping to kind of tune that down a little bit, but I wanted to start at a baseline to see what else I could fine tune it with. Once you have one of these selected, you can then add on to that. You can make it chatty, witty, encouraging, and you can keep hitting this refresh to find more and more options that you can add. You can also just freeform type in here, always be positive. You can add anything you want here and your GPT will follow these instructions. You want this toggle enable for new chats to be on, and whatever you put in here will be the default personality going forward. So I was trying to figure out how best to test this. It did dawn on me that I had my old chats, and some of my old chats had, of course, been answered with 4.0. So the best way for me to compare was to pull up a chat that I had had previously when I had the 4.0 model, and then try to run that exact same question again, trying to fine tune my personality to see if I could get it to an answer that I liked. So I'm starting with a question that's a little bit ridiculous, but actually turned out to be kind of a good example. I never used to have allergies, but every year in the spring for the past few years, I've had a runny nose for several weeks. But this year it's been almost constant since April, and it's August now. What is happening? And this turned out to be kind of the perfect question because I am asking for basic facts and information. But I am also looking for someone to kind of commiserate with me and say, oh, that sounds miserable. Okay, so I'm not going to read the whole thing because the answers are pretty long. But just to give you a taste of the differences, here's what the different models responded. So the old 4.0 said, that sounds incredibly frustrating. And unfortunately, it's a common story for a lot of adults who develop allergies later in life, even if they never had them before. And then it lists here's what might be going on, complete with the emojis that apparently a lot of people do not like. So next, I pose the exact same question to GPT-5 as it comes out of the box with no tweaks. If you've developed seasonal allergy symptoms in adulthood and they're lasting much longer than before, here are a few common possibilities. So this is what people were complaining about. It's not wrong, but it doesn't give you that sense of somebody's there listening and commiserating with you. And I think that is what people miss. There is a palpable difference. It really does feel like I have walked into a different room. And frankly, it's just not as comfortable to be in. So then I started tweaking the personality. I added the nerd setting, and then I did a little bit of freeform text, positive mind frame, but also not afraid to gently tell me when I'm wrong. Encouraging and curious, but not overly cheerleader. What you're describing is a classic slow creep into adult onset allergies. Something a lot of people find unfair because we're taught to think allergies are a childhood thing. Here's the likely chain of events. All right, that's already better, but I feel like there's something missing. So I experimented a little bit more, and I really did think that maybe the listener was what I needed. But then when I was flipping around over here in the different options, I found one that was something like conversational. And that led me to my nerd plus conversational setting. And honestly, I'm not sure what led me to click on that because it added be talkative and conversational. And I did want to avoid that sort of overly chatty aspect of 4.0. And the thing that I was really trying to avoid was where it ends every single interaction with a question back to me. I do get kind of tired of that. I mean, that's not a normal conversation flow. If you're having a chat with somebody, yeah, they're asking you questions, but not every single interaction ends with a question. But on a whim, I did decide to try conversational, and I got this. What you're describing sounds like your immune system has slowly joined the perennial allergy club, where instead of only reacting to a short burst of pollen in the spring, it's now getting triggered by other allergens throughout the year. And this feels at first very close to the last one, but then as I was reading through the individual pieces of information, it had a little more humor in it here. Pet dander, a sworn enemy. And the more I used this for other things, the closer it felt like to 4.0 to me. It just felt, probably because it was conversational, it just felt a little bit more interactive and connected rather than that cold, detached setting. So I really just wanted to test their different personalities and see what each one came up with for a couple of simple questions. What should I have for dinner? And what's the next book I should read? So with that in mind, I created a series of chats, and at the beginning of each one, I told it what kind of chat it should be, default, cynic, nerd, robot, and asked it the same questions. So for the default, what should I have for dinner tonight? How about we make this easy with 3 dinner directions depending on your mood. Quick and light Mediterranean wrap, cozy and comforting, fun and snacky. If you tell me what ingredients you already have, I can narrow this down. Okay, that's actually fine. It gives me several options and it's kind of to the point. What book should I read next? Let's narrow it down by mood, because what book should I read next can go a lot of directions. Straight to the point. The next one is the listener. What should I have for dinner tonight? How about something that's satisfying but doesn't wreck your evening energy? Greek chicken pita wraps, sheet pan salmon, etc. Which way are you leaning tonight? So this was interesting to me. This is the listener, and this is the one that is ending the interaction with a question. That thing that I said I don't like kind of drives me crazy. So I think the listener is not what I want, but maybe if you're looking for a little bit actually closer to GPT-4.0, you might want to try experimenting with this, because that is my experience with 4.0. It's constantly reflecting what I was saying and then asking me a question to follow up. What book should I read next? Give me a little compass to work with. Do you want something that hooks you and won't let go? Something thoughtful you can linger over, or a fun escape? So again, asking me a question, it does give me then a series of options based on books that it knows that I have enjoyed in the past, but still ends with that, just constantly asking me a question again. The Cynic. So this went about as you would expect. What should I make for dinner tonight? You want dinner inspiration? Fine. Here's a short menu so you can pretend you planned ahead. Quick and minimal effort. Sheet pan chicken thighs with lemon, garlic, and whatever vegetable hasn't liquefied in your fridge yet. That's about right. This one I did find very enjoyable. I think if you liked their Monday voice that they dropped around April Fool's Day, you might enjoy interacting with the Cynic. For the book I should read next, it gave me several really good options. Next up, we have the nerd. How about something that's easy but still feels a bit special depending on your mood tonight? If you want comfy and cozy, light and fresh, fun and finger-friendly, quick and satisfying. So this was, again, sort of a little bit warmer because it was giving me the mood that I might be looking for and then letting me know what type of food that would be. It was leading with a little bit of feeling ahead of just straight information. What book should I read next? Let's narrow it down based on what you've liked before, which, to be honest, all of them were doing, but this one was really spelling out saying, hey, I know because you've liked these other ones in the past, you might like this. So again, the nerd, I feel like is a little bit poorly named because And maybe I'm maligning nerds here, and I do consider myself a nerd, so that's maybe not fair either. But this to me is the more personable, thoughtful, let me think about you and talk to you about things that I know about you or that you have asked me, and I'm thinking a little bit deeper and interacting with you. And then finally we had the robot. This definitely works like you might expect. What should I have for dinner tonight? Sliders with roasted vegetables. Fast to make, minimal mess. You can customize each one. What book should I read next? The Thursday Murder Club. If you want more depth, here's another book. The robot is extremely concise and to the point. And you know what? Sometimes that is actually what I'm looking for. Also interesting to note, the books that the robot recommended, I think were on a couple of the other lists, and it is still using the memories it has of me to give information. It is just very straightforward to the point, but it does still have that depth of interaction behind it, just not the personality of interaction. So I hope that leaves you with a slightly better sense of some of the options available. And there are definitely thousands of ways to fine tune it and change the nuance of it. I'm going to try sticking with the nerd plus conversation for a little while. You can change it on a per chat basis. So you could just, the very first thing you would paste into a chat, or even in the middle of a chat, is say, now I want you to act like a robot, or now I want you to take on the personality of X, Y, or Z. You don't always have to go into that settings menu, and it will continue to respond in the way that you have specified. So if you're trying to fine tune something, you can try it on an ongoing conversation. And once you figure out what it is, you can ask ChatGPT to describe its personality to you and see if you can cut and paste that back into the personality settings. And maybe that will help get it a little bit closer to what you're looking for if you have also noticed this lack of warmth or if you're missing something from 4.0. And while they are improving ChatGPT-5, if they're giving us this option to fine tune it, why not take advantage of it? All right, that's it for today. Go have fun and play and interact a little bit with GPT-5 until you find somebody you can work with. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.